From John Jones starting a fist fight during the stare down, to Conor attacking a bus full of fighters, things often get out of hand leading up to a big fight, but they make for the most memorable times in the UFC. Remember how Stylebender created a riot before his title fight against the Reaper? Now, to be fair, I could make an entire list of iconic pre-fight moments from Izzy alone, but this one stands out the most since it's never been done before, and is, in all honesty, pretty creative. In October 2019, Adesanya went to Melbourne for a title unification bout against the undisputed king, Whittaker. It was enemy territory for Izzy, who represented New Zealand in that fight. The whole build-up was interesting, and Stylebender was high on confidence after his 5-round war with Kelvin that got him the interim title. That confidence was certainly reflected in his walkout, as he made his entrance in front of the largest attendance in UFC history. Izzy sent a few buddies first to do a little haka routine before his music played. Adesanya then went on to do a choreographed dance routine right before stepping into the cage and fighting the best fighter on the planet. How crazy do you have to be to pull that off? The dance routine was fantastic, which wasn't the biggest surprise, as Izzy used to be a dancer before he got into kickboxing. But the thing about making such a bold move is that you gotta win the fight now. If you lose, you'll just be the guy who danced before being beat. Well, Adesanya went on to knock Whittaker out cold in the second round and became the undisputed champ. Oh, and did I mention he wrote his opponent's name in the Book of Death right before the fight started? That guy is one of a kind. Speaking of one-of-a-kind athletes, Conor McGregor had to be on this list. The build-up to the mega fight between Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo Jr. was quite entertaining. The UFC wanted to capitalize on Conor's rising popularity and made both fighters go on a world tour and hold a number of press conferences. As good of an idea as that was, Aldo got the short end of the stick. The Brazilian champ couldn't speak any English and was being verbally abused every step of the way. So basically, the whole tour was just Conor bullying his opponent, and the fans kinda loved it. We had a few iconic moments in this whole debacle, tearing Aldo's picture, saying, "You're gonna die" in Portuguese, but in my opinion, the best one was when Conor stole Jose's belt. The UFC held a press conference in Dublin, so it was extra crazy as the Notorious One sat in front of his hometown. After a few verbal exchanges, Conor put his feet on the table as a trap, and when Aldo tried to imitate him and put his own feet on the table too, Conor ran over to the champ's side and stole the belt. We all know how the fight went as well.
Relaxed, smiling. Oh! Deflected!
So it's not like it all came back to bite him in the bottom. Now, there are some pre-fight moments that become iconic after the fight has played out, and this next one is in that category. It's Anderson Silva's intense face-off with Chris Weidman. The former middleweight champ's highlight reel is filled with badass moments inside the cage. The Spider was considered to be untouchable and had the longest winning streak and title reign in UFC history, records that he holds to this day. But this was the fight that would change everything. Silva was about to defend his title against the undefeated Weidman. Now, usually, anyone who faced Anderson would show too much respect and might even be intimidated. And as respectful as Chris was in the build-up, he never backed down. In their face-off at the ceremonial weigh-ins, the Spider tried to get into Weidman's space, but the All-American wasn't taking a step back, which led to a kind of funny moment in which both their lips touched. When Joe Rogan asked Chris how it felt, he said Silva had pretty soft lips.
First of all, what is it like to kiss Anderson Silva? It has nice lips, nice lips. My wife, don't get jealous.
As hilarious as it was, it showed how confident Chris was going into that fight. And guess what happened? He made history by knocking out Silva and taking his title away.
Anderson, oh my, he got hit! Looking to finish it! It is all over!
That's some fairy tale stuff right there. And since we're talking about stare downs, the one between Joanna and Rose will always remain iconic. Women's MMA was just beginning to grow, and after Ronda Rousey left the sport, the UFC was left with one dominant champ on the women's roster, which was the strawweight queen, Joanna. After 5 title defenses, everyone thought there wasn't any matchup for her. Enter Thug Rose, who was an Ultimate Fighter finalist and had lost for the belt before. before. No one thought she was gonna win. Certainly not the champ, who was throwing all kinds of insults toward her. Joanna was known for her trash talking, and she got into her opponent's head nearly every time. But Rose was composed the whole time the two were together. At their face-off at the ceremonial weigh-ins, Joanna did her thing and was very verbal toward the challenger. But you could see Rose whispering something to herself with her classic poker face. When Rogan asked Namajunas what she was saying, she replied that she was saying the Lord's prayers. As I mentioned earlier, these moments become iconic after the way the fight plays out. Thug Rose went on to shock the world and knock Joanna out in the very first round. It was a wholesome moment as she won the belt, and a lot of credit needs to be given to her composure before the fight. But there are times when the fighters just can't keep their cool. Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier would know all about it. This one is iconic for all the wrong reasons. Before their scheduled fight for the light heavyweight title, Jones and Cormier had a lot of bad blood. The two were considered to be the best fighters on earth, and it was clear that neither of them would lose to anyone but the other. And as much respect as they had for their opponent's skill, they seemed to despise each other. So the interviews were heated and the face-offs were quite dangerous. The two were scheduled to face off as a part of the media day, and the UFC president Dana White was on a vacation, which is the recipe for disaster no one saw coming. Jones walked up to Cormier pretty fast and got into his bubble. DC retaliated by grabbing Jon by the throat and pushing him back, and boy did things get escalated after that. There was a fist fight that everyone was trying to stop. DC even threw his shoe at Jones at one point. All hell had broken loose. To this day, many people call it the most intense pre-fight moment in UFC history. But perhaps this next moment might top it, which is the dolly incident by Conor. They don't call him the notorious one for anything. We all know Khabib and Conor don't like each other. But this was the moment where the poop metaphorically hit the fan. After Khabib put his hands on Conor's teammate, Artem Lobov, the former double champ decided to fly to America to pick a fight with the Eagle. It was fight week, and Khabib was leaving the arena in the UFC fighter bus, which was taking them back to the hotel. And out of nowhere, Conor turned up with a bunch of Irish guys and started attacking the bus. He called Khabib outside, but the Eagle was held back by the fighters inside the bus. McGregor decided to throw a dolly at the bus window, which caused Michael Chiesa to get injured and pull out of his fight. Conor managed to run away, but was later arrested and sued by a bunch of the fighters that were on the bus. Funny story, the guy he was trying to defend, Artem, is currently in the process of suing him for millions of dollars over his whiskey brand. So looking back, Conor might not think it was worth it. But that moment led to us having the biggest fight in UFC history, and Conor made a bank, so it all worked out. Well, that's all we have for the most iconic UFC pre-fight moments.